I'm kind of afraid to say this, but seeing as the list for this year is pretty, let's say, rowdy, let's just say that this anime really sets things to come. Hello everyone, welcome to the Weeb Initiative. I'm your host, the Weeb. This is the show where every other week I'll be talking about anime, manga, and everything in between. This week I'll be talking about, and as the first episode of this year, Grenadier or Grenadier, which is a pretty, I'd say, product of its time, I would say, in some sense. So before I even start, let's start with the disclaimers. So first off, spoiler alert, I'll be talking about everything that happens in the anime. I'll only be talking about things of the anime, not the manga. And as far as I have researched, because I didn't actually read it, I just watched it, I'm pretty sure that probably the story doesn't end in the anime, and even then I don't think that the ending in the anime is strictly corresponding to the one in the manga, which would put this more or less in the same camp as the original anime for Fullmetal Alchemist. I'm not comparing the two, I'm just saying that they may have used a similar thing where the studio had to, let's say, extrapolate the ending more than having an actual source material to check it. So with that said, let's start with the stats. So Grenada or Grenadier was originally a manga written by Sosuke Kaise, ran from April 2002 to March 2005, and it had 7 volumes. And the anime was made by Studio Live or Group Tech. I don't actually know. From what I could find, Studio Live has been dissolved, I think, from 2011 to now. From 2011, so they no longer work. The company does not exist anymore. And Group Tech, I don't have many references to actually say about them. They have not release as many anime as you would think, with their latest production being Hanakappa, which is a kids anime from what I could find, and it started on 2010 and has been ongoing since. So I don't know, their portfolio is pretty weird in that sense. I don't know why they are mentioned in the production of Grenadier considering that theme, but okay, you can go from producing your average shonen ecchi kind of stuff and then going to kids anime. I don't judge. I think it's pretty okay. Anyways, so those are basically the stats. So the manga originally ran from 2002 to 2005, and considering the dates, the manga actually ended after the anime ended, so that's why I'm saying that probably the end of the anime is not really the actual ending of the manga. That being said, I'll talk a bit about the story and then some of my thoughts. So before I even start with the story, let's just a quick reality check, okay? Because this is the first episode of the year, and I feel like I need to have at the very least a bit of housekeeping, just so I can get things done, okay? I feel like I need to actually talk a bit about this. So first things first, so this year, 2026, planning to go to Japan on August, and in that sense I'm trying to keep every single one of my episodes pre-produced. There is some episodes that I want specifically to do after I return because they involve like bigger projects that I want to partake this year, since I want to believe that I have more time since I changed jobs last year, and also because given the fact that I will be like 20 days in Japan, I will not be able to watch nor record and edit the minimum amount that I edit these episodes anyway, anything on August. And for that matter, I want to at the very least stay on top of my things to get this thing get everything done. That being said, I want to also this year do the one episode that I'm really afraid of, because I don't know how each of the platforms that I'm in are going to react to it, because there's one specific episode which I'm kind of uncertain how everything will go on, but we'll get there when we get there. I don't want to build suspense on the very first episode, but anyways. And so for that matter, I want to believe that this year will be a really great year, even better than 2024, 2025. And I hope you guys stick around for everything that I'm working on, and maybe hopefully if this actually goes off, I can move into full-time content production, but content creation, but we'll get there when we get there. So talking about the story, so Grenadier is about our main character, Rushuna Tendo, or Tendo Rushuna, who is a gunslinger. Her theme is really like fan service cowboy. It's a female fan service cowboy in a really weird kind of setting where we have these fictional, I would say a fictional content with a whole lot of different nations and stuff. And she comes from a country called Tento, and she is a traveler for the most part. You can see right from her getup that the gunslinger kind of Wild West motif is really present, also due to her choice of weapon, 6-shooter 38 caliber revolver, and basically the setting, right? So the whole world is on war times, and for the most part it's a really violent situation overall in the whole world. And the thing about Rushuna is that she is more of a pacifist, not so much that she doesn't actually engage in the fact that she has a gun, but she chooses not to actually aim for the kill and so on and so forth. Together with that, we have also the, let's say, your average bandit, let's say, attacking villages and stuff. They call each person that uses specifically a gun to fight, they call them senshi, and basically there is a, let's say, conflict that they set up from the very beginning about using a gun and using a sword, because also in this world we have samurai. Why is the theming like gunslinger versus samurai? I don't know. Insert the meme about Indiana Jones bringing a gun to a sword fight, or a sword to a gunfight, And well, the thing is, right? So the good sword fighters, at the very least in this world, they can dodge and slash bullets in half. So basically, let's say they have equal footing when everybody who has a sword actually is Genji from Overwatch. But anyways, so basically the theming is the travels of Rushuna, and in the very first episode she is joined by Yajiro Kojima, who is one of the samurai, but he's not a bandit. He's more of a resistance fighter, more or less. He's a mercenary at the beginning, but as the story goes on, they kind of try to build a character for him where he starts off wanting to overthrow the government to actually try to unify the whole world and actually stop the violence and war. But as time goes on, we will see that he changes his approach due to Rushuna's influence. And for the first, I think, 4 or 5 episodes maybe, the two of them will travel throughout the land and see different situations. The first 2 episodes, I think, they are more for showing off the skills of Rushuna specifically, because at the first let's say first sight, she does not really strike as much of let's say the way that they construct her character for the first 2 episodes does not lead you to believe that she's a badass with the gun. But as the action scenes go on and different battles go on, you'll see that she is really skilled, and there is a reason why even though she is a pacifist, she stays winning. And while everybody's holding a gun, she's choosing not to kill anyone, and she still holds her own. And in that sense, we go through let's say the first few conflicts, where first she helps Yajiro to rescue feudal lord in one bandit camp that they find between two cities, and then saving that feudal lord, Yajiro joins her, and then for the next few episodes they go on to meet until the 4th episode they go on to meet the most recurring villain in the story at this point, called Jester. He has and it's a really weird thing. The weapon that he uses is a gun of basically pressurized air, but somehow it goes through walls and stuff. And basically it works like a railgun, but it's air somehow. And not to mention the fact that if something moves there that fast, the sonic crack and everything else. So, but still, getting too much into details. So basically the thing is, it is a pretty run-of-the-mill, really simple, episodic kind of shonen ecchi at the beginning, specifically because I will leave the art from the thumbnail to after I record this episode, but you can see from the thumbnail, okay, why I'm saying this is ecchi. And not only that, but showing this in combination with the fact that Rushuna has a great I would say great taste. She really looks forward to taking a bath on an onsen, and for that reason, you know, the non-revealing nudity and stuff. Outside of that, right, so there is the fact that why did I choose to watch this specifically? So there was this one clip that I seen, and this is due to, I will not actually remember the name of the channel on YouTube, sorry, but from time to time they would publish shorts on some anime that have really great animation from the 90s to the early 2000s. And to be fair, and this is something that I really like about this anime, is that Rushuna having a revolver really lends itself to the work that the studio had with the animation, specifically with her loading the revolver is really nice, but reloading the revolver when she does it in a normal fashion, or when she's releasing the shells and stuff. But then we land to the other short that actually first ignited my interest about this anime, is because there is this one snippet of the opening. The opening specifically shows it, but you can see multiple times in the anime that she somehow, and this is the thing, right? So there's no word to actually describe how much this scene is ludicrous, but it reminds me a lot of the bridge scene in High School of the Dead in the anime, because Rushuna just comes up, releases all the 6 shells that she just spent, and then somehow bounces 6 new bullets out of her chest and lines it up with the oh my god, with the cylinder of the revolver and loads it in one go. It was like, holy shit, they didn't actually do it. And when I saw just this really little snippet of the opening, I was like, holy shit, I need to watch this, because it is so ludicrous, so out of this world. And to be fair, right, so the anime doesn't actually lend itself as serious. It has a really big component of comedy. Some of the jokes don't actually land, and some of them, when seen by, let's say, a Western audience, you would really question how in the hell did this get an actual dub, because this was dubbed by Viz Media back in 2005, sorry, but this was licensed for the West and had an actual official dub done to it. And seeing it now, no fucking way this would have passed. And what I just found it funny, because it is so ludicrous. And here's the thing, right? So to watch something like this, and this goes for a whole lot of edgy things, High School DxD, Makenki, and so on and so forth, you need to have at the very least a little bit of, let's say, you need to be at the mind space of having a bit of comedy with the action, because otherwise this really becomes just absurd. And the fact that this becomes so absurd is the fact that the way that she reloads everything is really out of this world. And then the fact that as the anime goes on, you can see that not only her but a lot of people do somewhat not similar things, but just as absurd things as her. And to be fair, right, there is a good beat of, at the very least, design for the weapons that the enemies use, the whole thing about the animation on action scenes are really great. And also I would say that at the very least, the bones of these animes are really good, though the execution may not have been as smooth as you would have guessed. And talking about the rest of the anime, right? So by the 5th or 6th episode, we reach a point where we are introduced to our last main character, Kurenai Mikan, who is effectively a child that Rushuna and Yajiro get to meet in a, how do you say that? In a hotel in the middle of nowhere, whose owner has the same policy as Rushuna of trying to disarm people through smiles, but whereas Rushuna tries to appeal more to the sentimental side, let's say that the owner of this bathhouse, Toka, she lends herself more on the satisfaction side, and easy to say that when you see it, you'd be like, okay, I got the vibe, and again, you need to have at the very least a little of comedic mindset to watch this before everything, because this anime is really out there. It is really out there. It goes from 0 to 100 really fast and just out of nowhere. And this is where my critique goes. So after they run and get Mikan, so we have a few more episodes where they kind of develop Mikan a bit, and then we have this whole build up of whatever the hell is going to happen until the end of the anime, because at the point that they get Mikan, the anime just kind of feels a bit directionless, because until this point it was just Yajiro and Rushuna kind of having that somewhat sentimental kind of romantic tension between them, and now that they have the kid together, there is no real romantic tension to be had, because there is this whole thing where she's the third wheel, and so she will antagonize Yajiro for the most part, and then lean on Rushuna for everything from emotional support to bounce off of her jokes. But at the same time too, starting for the half of the anime, I think they pivot it a lot into having a story for no reason, because at this point, and this is already my opinion, but I think that they could have had a full episodic kind of thing with just little snippets of story between them, and it would have been okay. But I think that at some point they had already been informed that there wouldn't be a second season, nor special, nor anything, and for that reason they tried to rush the ending. So what happens is that there is a somewhat of a lore dump, more or less. I am saying lore dump, but it is really generous, because what they actually do is just throw a whole lot of concepts at the wall and don't actually explain anything. So for one reason or another, there is this major, let's say, government body in what appears to be the whole world, because they go through a whole lot of villages that would seem like different countries, and for one reason or another, this government entity called Tenshi goes and puts a bounty on Rushuna's head for treason, and everybody now is against her. Everybody who has at the very least a gun to their name, and basically all the peasants, because again this is a feudal kind of stuff, all the peasants are okay with her, because they just like are afraid of her more than they trying to actually try to harm her. But everybody who has a gun to their name tries to hunt her down and stuff. And the plot twist is that Tenshi is the one that Tenshi, as not only the organization but the person who is the head of the government, more or less, is the person who kind of trained Rushuna from the very beginning. So it does not become kind of clear from the get-go what the hell is happening. And so from the middle of the anime forward, after the revelation that Rushuna has a bounty on her head, they set out to the main capital to actually confront Tenshi as to why she would put a bounty on Rushuna. That being said, what happens then is that we get the a very similar structure to JoJo Part 3, where each episode we have a different Jutensen, who are basically the special royal guard with different really esoteric weapons, not only guns, but really esoteric weapons overall, going after her one by one, and every one that fails is killed by the Jester, who at this point is, let's say, the main villain. It is also implied by the, I don't know, 8th episode that the Tenchi that's currently on power is not the real Tenchi, because we see both Tenchis, we as audience see the both Tenchis conversing with each other, and clearly the one that's good is imprisoned in the castle, and the one that's bad is clearly impersonating her and giving the order to actually go hunt down Rushuna for one reason or another. They don't actually mention why at the beginning, they don't mention who the hell anyone is, and they just throw names out in the air and hope that you get the idea. And after some time, they go through, Rushuna meets some other people that will help her, from some other peasants on a different village. One of the Jutens saying that he is actually a childhood friend of hers, who's a pervert who always liked her, but let's just focus on the fact that he is the childhood friend, and he has kind of a crush on her and will help her at some point. And from then on, we have these episodic kind of confrontations until we reach the point where she goes up to the castle and choosing to be the pacifist that she has kind of learned throughout her journey. Even though the journey is pretty short on our eyes, who's watching the anime, she kind of tries to one-up everybody without actually killing anyone. And for better or for worse, she kind of does it. But then the story ends as you would expect. Nobody dies and everybody lives happily ever after the Jester is actually revealed to be Yajiro's master, who was thought to be dead, but actually was scheming behind everybody's back to have his own ambitions of power fulfilled. But then Yajiro, having run with Rushuna for so much time, has actually become somewhat of pacifist himself, and so he chooses not to kill his master. And for that reason, the whole thing kind of goes on to the fact that each of them basically resolves everything with just the power of friendship and no actual killing anyone. And that's basically the story. It's really, really simple. Basically, it's a tale as old as time. It's the basic power of friendship against better guns, better weapons, and an actual plan. Trumped everything because of the power of friendship. It's most normal anime you could ever imagine. With that said, let's get to my opinion. So, first off, talking about the story. So, and this is something that falls on me for a bit, so bear with me on that. So the original manga is 7 volumes long, so I would guess with like 8 chapters each, around 50 to 60, maybe even 70 chapters. And the fact of the matter is, right, so what it feels like to watch this anime is that they had to cut off all of the flashbacks or thoughts that are exposition based, just so they could cram the action scenes and the occasional joke inside of the episode. This is not something that I could confirm by any, like, let's say bibliographic means. I could not find an interview with the producers or stuff like that, but this is what I feel like when talking about watching this. So it really does feel and sound like they really wanted to do the flashback scene to actually explain stuff, but they didn't because it was not integrally necessary for the plot, because you could just get most things from context alone, though it would have been a better presentation. So for instance, right, so when you go to the article for Grenadier in Wikipedia, for example, you can see that more of the Juntensei are actually mentioned than the ones that appear in the anime. That's the first thing. The second thing is that clearly, and this is something that I alluded to at the beginning, this anime didn't have the source material to check up with, so I don't know how much of this is actually an idea from the studio based on something that the author said, or if it was something that was already planned for the author. But it's still 12 episodes clearly wasn't enough time to actually cover everything that they wanted to. I would say that a second season would have helped, but as seen in the fact that one of the studios that's mentioned has been dissolved and the other one has a pretty spotty portfolio, not because competence, but I think because of other projects, I would say that this is due to a limitation on the studio and maybe interest really, but just say that this is not the worst anime ever, but clearly the manga, at the very least from everything that I could find, would indicate that it is better. With that said, as I said at the beginning, the animation is pretty okay. For the most part, the action scenes that are the things that actually hold this thing together are really great. The ideas for the guns, the weapons, everything is really nice. The choreography for the most part, most fights are pretty interesting, and even then the ideas for each of the weapons, each of the characters and stuff, it's somewhat nice. I would say that the guy that fights underwater is a bit more comedic than an actual fighter, because come on man, the guy communicates through signs underwater, like come on, like actual like wooden plank signs with things written out on them. So this is just comedy at this point, right? Joined up to that, the fact that nothing really gets explained in relation to the overarching plot of the fact that the world is on constant war, and the fact that the girl who is impersonating Tenshi apparently was trained besides Rushuna to be a double for Tenshi, because somehow Tenshi needed a double for protection, but they don't actually, like, aside from them, there is no real, like, was there a necessity to actually have a double? And I saw somewhere on reading about this, I will not remember like where I saw this, but I read somewhere that apparently this whole thing about the world at war and guns against swords and stuff, this was, I will not say a critique, but a reference to the unification process of Japan back in before the shogunate, like on the warlord era. And I cannot qualify that. I cannot verify whatsoever if that's true or not. Like, it kind of feels a bit of a stretch. I mean, and this is coming from someone who only knows tangential feudal era Japan history because of Lone Wolf and Cub, but I can see the idea, but at the same time I think this is a bit of too much credit given out to it, or the metaphor is not landing on me, I don't know. Anyways, so talking about the whole anime as a whole, I already said animation is pretty great, the story is really iffy. Try to read the manga. I do not guarantee it whatsoever, but I would say that probably it's better. And talking about the rest, music and songs, nothing to write home about. Talking about the rest of the everything, like, say, this anime is not that bad, it is not that great, although I would say it is, at the release for me, who's almost 30 years old, this is a time capsule somewhat. This really reminds me, not only on the theming side, but also on the art. It really reminds me, and this was something that was going on in my mind before I went to look into the studios and stuff. I really thought this was produced by TNK, the same guys who did High School DxD, the original 3 seasons. I really thought this was done by TNK, because TNK has been around for so long, but turns out it wasn't. The art style, however, is pretty close, I would say, and in that same sense, it carries somewhat of the same kind of the ecchi shonen retro kind of stuff. It has a little bit of Love Hina with its kind of pervert jokes, and it has something on the same wavelength as the original anime from Trigun, which then leads me to reminisce about that time, the early to mid 2000s, which was when I was kind of a kid, and nostalgia, rules, tent classes, and so on and so forth. And that is at the very least the one reason that I will give to me letting have a pass, even though I shouldn't. I think that this anime, end of the day, is the definition of mediocre. Mediocre as in it is pretty mid of the road. Some would say 5 out of 10. It is okay. It is there, and that's just it. It's not doing anything special. It's not doing anything that would grant it any kind of accolade. But at the same time, it is not so unbearable to me to give less than half the possible score, I'd say. Even then, again, I would not recommend this wholeheartedly, but if you want to have a laugh at a product of its time, more or less, and really like go back to, I'm not saying a touch point, but go back to the average of the 2004, 2005, early to mid 2000s kind of stuff, I would say this is pretty on point for it. I say that, but remember that 2004, 2005 was around, I think probably the height, or maybe not really the height, but the increasing popularity of Naruto, Bleach, Blood Plus came out at somewhat of the same time. The anime for Death Note would come, I think, 1 year later, and a whole lot of stuff was really great and different from this back in the mid 2000s. But this, I think, it's a good example of what was the average in that time. And the one thing that I want you to take away from this episode to, let's say, the rest of the season of the show is that probably, I'll say incidentally, maybe we will go really deep in the spicy themes this year. I would say that it is not certain. There is, I think, one episode which is really spicy, but the rest I still have to do a whole lot of things that I left from last year and things that just ended in December, namely Cinderella Grey. But even then, I mean, this is packed with a lot of stuff. So there is the sequel for Gate, there's the sequel for Fading, and well, we'll get there anyways. So before I start to really get going on the yapping, thank you guys for listening, thank you guys for watching. Please like, please share, please follow, depending on the platform you're in, and stick around for next time. Bye.